You can now support Ghost Maps on Patreon. Simply look for We Are HANTU or click the link in the description. Inspired by an account from Rusman. Ghost Maps. Entry 126. Kent Ridge, Singapore. It's good to be back. I've made it a point to take more breaks recently, what with everything that's happened over the last year or so. Ghost Maps now involves interviewing people with stories to share, and if possible, the spirits that they encounter. That sort of work, I'm sure you can imagine, takes a lot out of me. That's why my interview with a morgue technician named Fadil has to be broken into 2 parts. And even then, it's barely scratching the surface, Fadil says, as we order our drinks at this coffee shop in Outram, surrounded by tall trees. But I think 2's plenty for now, he adds, with a warm smile. He seems like a pretty together guy. His hair's neatly cut and styled. He's dressed in a fitting short-sleeve shirt, tailored trousers, and moccasins. All in all, he's not what most people would expect from someone in his line of work. I've seen more dead bodies than most people, he says. I can't speak for other technicians, but when you're always surrounded by death, you instinctively learn to enjoy life. Nice clothes aren't the extent of that enjoyment for Fadil though. He tells me he tries to leave work punctually as much as possible. He speaks about how he likes to spend lots of time with friends and family, and he even finds space in his schedule to pick up new hobbies too. I'm currently taking a pottery class every Friday, he says, with a chuckle. I'm not great, but it relaxes me. Fadil doesn't seem completely relaxed, however, when he tells me about the things he's seen at his job. Thankfully, I've not been hurt, but well, it doesn't take physical pain to leave scars, you know? I tell him that I understand, probably more than he'll ever know. And then, as our drinks arrive, I switch my recorder on and ask him to start from the beginning. Fadil first joined this hospital along Kent Ridge in 2016. His team was pleasant enough, and as strange as it sounds, working in a morgue just felt like another job to him. It's not that he didn't have any respect for the dead, he's quick to tell me. Respect is one thing, he says. I'll treat everybody with the same kind of dignity I would treat any living person. But reverence? That's up to their religions and beliefs. To get to the morgue from that floor's lift, Fadil had to walk along a lightning bolt-shaped corridor. At the midpoint of this corridor, around a corner from either side, was a cafeteria. It was here that Fadil and his colleagues normally had their lunch and tea breaks. They would head out for dinner during their late shifts, but only because the cafeteria was closed. Still, it was a familiar spot, this cafeteria, an always welcome sight, even when they passed it while working. Well, until one particular Friday night. Fadil's radio was on and tuned to a popular local station. because of the day and the hour, the station was playing a whole lot of EDM, just what he needed to keep him going. He was, after all, knee-deep in paperwork. Well, that's the part of the job everyone forgets, he says, with a smile. Fadil tells me that he was typing away on his computer while completely alone in the morgue. I must look impressed because he reminds me that this was nothing more than work to him. Honestly, at that moment, those forms were scarier than anything else around. He laughs. It was 11:47 p.m. Fadil knew the exact time because he had received a WhatsApp message from his colleague Andrew before checking his phone's clock. Coming down now, Andrew's message had said, "Need help at lift." Fadil understood that could only mean one thing. Andrew was wheeling a body down to the morgue. Fadil stood up and stretched. As he made his way out of the morgue, though, the radio suddenly went silent. Almost as if someone had abruptly switched it off. He thought it was odd, but just assumed that the batteries had died. Shrugging, he continued at a leisurely pace towards the lift. He wasn't expecting to see anyone else at this hour along the corridor. Not many people come down to this floor, except to pop into the cafeteria, after all. Which was why he stopped in his tracks when he turned the corner and saw a woman standing in front of the cafeteria facing its locked door. You never think it's something of the ordinary at first, Fadil says. Your brain always comes up with some simple reason or explanation. Which was why, instead of running in terror, Fadil's first instinct was to ask the woman, "Can I help you?" She didn't respond. She just stood there in her plain white dress. Her long hair came down to the small of her back. Fadil couldn't see her face. Again, he asked, "Can I help you?" This time, she did respond by humming what sounded like a very, very old song. It sounded like something his maternal grandmother would hum while cooking when he was just a child. But this woman, as far as he could tell, didn't seem very old. Echoing off the walls of his empty corridor, that song started to take an ominous quality. Like he wasn't just hearing it, but it was playing inside his head. Fadil began to feel uneasy. Steadying himself with a deep breath, he marched past the woman as quickly as he could. Once he turned the second corner, the humming suddenly stopped. He picked up the pace, jogging towards the lift where Andrew was waiting for him. Andrew was standing on the far end of a gurney. On the gurney was a body, covered from head to toe by a white sheet. The plain white of the sheet immediately reminded Fadil of the woman's dress. He felt that uneasiness start to grip him again. But as he took another deep breath, the feeling slowly subsided. "Hello, friend," Andrew greeted, annoyed. "Walk from the office, must take so long, huh?" Fadil just shook his head. "Andrew told me later that I looked terrified," he says. "That's why he didn't push the matter any further." Wordlessly, Fadil took the other end of the gurney and started walking backwards. Andrew's eyes remained locked on him the whole time before they turned the corner. He seemed more curious than annoyed now, but he knew better than to ask. And then they turned the corner and his attention shifted towards the cafeteria. Fadil didn't turn to look. He didn't need to. He knew she was still there. Fadil shifted his focus to the body on the gurney, and Andrew did the same. Fadil could hear his colleague muttering something to himself. Later, Andrew would tell him that he had been fervently praying. As the pair turned the corner, Fadil risked looking up one last time. "I felt compelled to," he tells me, his tone more thoughtful than fearful. "I don't know if it was morbid curiosity or something else. What he saw didn't offer him any comfort whatsoever." Looking over Andrew's shoulder, Fadil saw that there was no one anywhere along the corridor. "That would have been bad enough already," Fadil tells me. "Except that when we returned to the morgue, my radio had somehow been switched on again." I ask him if he knows why the woman was there, and he shakes his head. "I could come up with all sorts of reasons, but I guess I'll never know for sure," he says. I then ask him if he would like to know, and he tells me that he's not sure, but he's willing to help me find out. 2 days have passed. I'm now standing by the lift on the floor where the hospital's morgue is located. Fadil's waiting for me outside the hospital grounds, choosing to leave after granting me access to this floor. It's precisely 11:47 p.m. I walk down the corridor and within seconds make a turn. I see the locked door to the cafeteria, and I see, standing in front of it, a woman in all white, with hair down to the small of her back. I feel that same uneasiness wash over me. "Inilah dia," she says, her voice raspy. "So this is him." It's not a question. I nod. Even though she's not facing me and can't see my response, she continues, this time in English. "Was it the boy? The one with the nice clothes?" I don't say or do anything. She growls a moment later, as if my silence is answer enough. Tell him that I meant him no harm. Tell him that I lived here long before this hospital was built. I detect an almost wistful tone, but I wonder how much of that is what I hear and how much of it is what I want to hear. After all, it's nicer to think of this woman as a woman and not what she's become, what she's capable of doing. Tell him that as long as he continues to show my old home the respect it deserves, he will have nothing to fear. She waves a hand at me dismissively. Her fingernails are frighteningly long, almost like claws. Dried blood is caked underneath each of them. I thank her for sharing this with me, then calmly walk back around the corner and take the lift to the ground floor. As I leave the hospital grounds, I see Fadil pacing nervously in a car park. He turns towards my direction, and I catch the look on his face. I offer up just the slightest smile. It seems to calm his nerves. Then I ask him if there's a coffee shop nearby where we can conduct the second half of our interview. If you want to discover more of Southeast Asia's other side, subscribe now and follow us on social media. You can also be one of our supporters on Patreon. Look for We Are HANTU or click the links in the description. Ghost Maps is a HANTU production created by Kyle Ong and Wayne Ray, with art direction by Jolene Lim, and recorded on Audio Technica mics.